Childhood obesity has more than doubled over the past 30 years, resulting in both immediate and long-term effects on health and well-being. Diet and exercise play a critical role in this epidemic, but what are its root causes? With $2.8 million in funding from the National Institutes of Health, Jody Ganaban, a professor of psychology, is conducting extensive research on the interplay of genetics and the environment to better understand the underlying risk factors and implications for treatment and disease prevention. Welcome, Dr. Ganaban. In studying obesity, childhood obesity, your work has focused on adopted children. You look at both birth and adoptive parents. Why?
Well, we're using adoption design to tease apart the relative influences of genetic factors, prenatal factors, and environmental factors on the development of obesity or being overweight across childhood. We're using this design because, as you know, adopted children share an environment with their adoptive families, but they don't share genes. On the other hand, adopted children share genes with their biological parents or their birth parents, but they do not share a common environment. So in this type of design, if we find that the adopted child's weight more closely resembles their adoptive parents, then we can conclude that there's something about the environment that they share that influences the weights of the parents and the children. On the other hand, if we find that the adoptive children's weights closely resemble their biological parents, then we can conclude that genetic factors may be operative. Another important feature of the adoption design is that we can also tease apart prenatal environmental influences from postnatal environmental influences. And again, this is because the biological mother creates the prenatal environment for the child, but in contrast, the adoptive parents control the child's postnatal environment. So that enables us to really tease apart the effects of different types of environments upon the child's growth and weight gain or weight loss over time. So the real purpose of our study is to look at how these factors work together to launch children on a weight trajectory that's going to lead to obesity, or also maintain children on this trajectory. So that's really what we're trying to do in this type of work.
So how are you assessing and measuring data to determine obesity risks in children?
Well, my study is actually an extension of an ongoing prospective adoption study that was started in 2002 by researchers here at GW, as well as Penn State and the University of Oregon, Yale University, and the University of Pittsburgh. And this larger study includes 561 children who were adopted within the first year of life. Actually, within the first month of life, I should say. And we've been following up these children since they were about 6 months of age. So this has been a long-term study. And we've been following the children and their families, their adoptive families and biological families, through in-home visits, through web-based questionnaires, through telephone interviews. And in my study, we're also using medical records to assess the children's prenatal risks as well as their growth patterns.
Well, this is fascinating. So what do your preliminary findings indicate? Is childhood obesity predicted by a mix of genetics and the environment well before a baby is born?
Well, what we're finding, and these are preliminary data because we're only halfway through data collection for the broader project, but what we're finding so far is that genetic, prenatal, as well as postnatal factors all influence the child's weight trajectories over time. However, the picture is more complicated than just saying genes and environment are important. What we're finding so far is that genes and prenatal and postnatal environmental factors influence the children's weight trajectories at different points in time. In particular, based on some preliminary analyses with about 200 children in the sample, we have found that genetic risk seems to increase over time. So genetic risk seems to influence a child's weight and weight gain between ages 2 and 5, but the effect becomes stronger after age 5. In contrast, what we're finding is that some prenatal factors have an influence upon children's weight gain over time, but these effects start to wane after age 5. And then another factor that we've looked at so far is this phenomenon called early accelerated growth. We have a small number of children in our sample who were born underweight, but then they rapidly put on weight between birth and 9 months of age. So they might start at the 30th percentile for weight, but then jump up to the 60th or 70th percentile for weight. So they show catch-up growth or accelerated growth. Doesn't sound like that would be a bad thing, but it turns out when children put on weight that fast, within such a short period of time, they're putting on fat mass, not lean mass. And this seems to be a risk factor for later obesity. What we're finding, however, is that again is true when we look at the children's weight trajectories between ages 2 and 5, but after that, the influence seems to decrease. So what does this all mean when we put this all together? So based on these preliminary studies, it looks like prenatal factors and maybe very early postnatal factors may launch a child on a weight trajectory that will lead to being overweight or obese. But it may be genes that take over and maintain children on that trajectory.
It's interesting. So I have to ask the million-dollar question. What can we do in the way of intervention and treatment?
Well, I'm hoping that's a $3 million question. What can we do? Well, again, my findings are preliminary based upon a small subset of children, and we haven't had the chance yet to collect information about the children's diets and complete the more comprehensive assessments of the children's genetic risk and postnatal environments. So that's to come. But what we hope to do is to use the information that we do obtain to identify children who show different patterns of growth over time. It's likely there'll be substantial number of children who show healthy weight between 2 and 10 years of age, and they're fine. But we're also anticipating, we're beginning to see this, that there are a number of children who show rapid increases in their weight, and they're heading towards obesity. We also see some children who start on this trajectory between the ages of 2 and 4, and some children who are starting at age 6. So our hope is to look at those children, identify the children who are in each of these different trajectories, and get a better understanding of the degree to which genes, the prenatal environment or the postnatal environment, set children on those trajectories, and the degree to which these factors then keep children on these trajectories. So the idea here, and one thing that I'm very, very interested in also, is looking at how children's postnatal environments can exacerbate or dampen the expression of genetic and prenatal risks on these trajectories. So that's my preliminary answer to the million-dollar question.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been a very interesting discussion on a topic that is at the forefront of our nation's health concerns. I want to thank Dr. Ganaban for sharing with us her insights today. Thank you.
And thank you very much for this opportunity.